Platformers are going through something right now, and honestly, it's one of the best times to be a fan of the genre. Whether you're into tight precision movement or more chill exploratory stuff, the lineup that's been dropping lately is stacked in a way that could eat through most of your free time pretty fast. We put together 15 platform games that are absolutely worth your attention right now, ranging from long-awaited sequels to brand new IPs that came out of nowhere. Some of these you've already heard about, and some of them are going to catch you completely off guard. So let's get into it. Neva. Everything about Neva feels like a moving painting because it comes from the same team that made Grizz. You start off as Alba, who is bonded to this majestic wolf cub, and you both have to navigate a world that is literally rotting away. The combat is surprisingly tight and snappy, which is great since the platforming requires some pretty precise timing. Honestly, the way the wolf grows up throughout the game actually changes how you play and tackle different puzzles. Plus, the relationship between the two characters makes every boss fight feel personal rather than just a challenge to overcome. You spend a lot of time double jumping and dashing through these gorgeous environments that look peaceful until the shadow monsters show up. The truth is that the level design uses the wolf's evolution to keep the mechanics fresh, so you never feel like you're just doing the same loops. And yeah, the platforming gets pretty intense later on when the world starts falling apart under your feet. It's wild how they manage to make the movement feel so fluid while telling a story that doesn't need a single line of dialogue. You basically have to protect your companion while it learns to defend itself against the decay. What's wild is how the colors shift based on the emotional weight of the scene, which helps you stay locked into the vibe. Most of the time, you are just trying to find a safe path through the chaos, but the platforming challenges really test your reflexes. This means that you cannot just spam buttons because the timing on your air dashes is crucial for survival. Anyway, the ending is going to stay with you way after you put the controller down. You should definitely check this out if you want a game that looks as good as it plays. The Rogue Prince of Persia. You probably remember the classic Prince of Persia games for the platforming, but this new roguelite take is a completely different beast. The Rogue Prince of Persia takes that classic wall running we all love and throws it into a fast-paced loop where every death sends you back to the start. Imagine you are trying to save the capital city from a massive Hun invasion, but you have a magical trinket that lets you come back to life. The developers behind Dead Cells worked on this so the movement feels incredibly responsive and satisfying right out of the gate. You spend a lot of time chaining wall runs and acrobatic leaps to avoid traps while looking for the best loot. And honestly, the procedural levels keep the platforming fresh because you never know exactly where the next spike pit will be. Then again, the combat is just as important as the jumping because you have to kick enemies into walls to survive. The thing is that the game rewards you for being aggressive and staying in the air as much as possible. So yeah, you will find yourself dying a lot, but each run unlocks new weapons that make the next attempt a bit easier. Basically, the whole vibe is about finding your flow state while dodging purple fire and soldiers. What's wild is how the environment changes slightly between runs to keep you on your toes. Also though, the art style is super colorful and stylized, which makes the fast action easy to track. Look, the platforming challenges here are definitely more about speed and momentum than just precision. This means that you really have to master the wall climbing mechanics to reach the hidden areas. This is basically the perfect game for anyone who wants a challenge that doesn't feel unfair. Constance. Imagine a world where your main weapon is a paintbrush and your creativity is the only thing keeping you from a total mental breakdown. You play as an artist named Constance who is exploring a decaying inner world that represents her own mind and struggles. This is a hand-drawn Metroidvania where you gain new abilities by learning different painting techniques as you explore. For example, you can turn into a literal stroke of paint to dash through solid walls or fly across gaps. The combat is very fast, and you have to switch between different colors to exploit the weaknesses of the enemies. Now the animations are some of the smoothest I have seen in an indie game lately, and it makes the platforming feel great. You will find hidden secrets tucked away in every corner of the map, which means you really have to pay attention to the background art. The thing is that the game deals with some heavy themes like burnout and the pressure of being a creator. On top of that, you have a stamina bar that you have to manage while using your special brush moves. But seriously, the way the world transforms around you as you progress is honestly one of the coolest things about the game. You are basically trying to bring color back to a world that has gone gray and lifeless because of the protagonist's internal conflict. The level design is very clever, and it forces you to think outside the box to reach the next area. Plus, you can customize your playstyle with different charms and brush upgrades that you find along the way. Like when you get the ability to create platforms out of thin air, it completely changes how you approach the older zones. It feels like a mix of Hollow Knight and some of the classic art-focused platformers from back in the day. So then you should be prepared for some tough platforming challenges that will test your patience and your precision. At the end of the day, this is a beautiful and meaningful journey that every fan of the genre needs to experience. Planet of Lana II.
Lana? Lotia. Oh.
If you thought the first game was a vibe, then this sequel is going to absolutely blow your mind with its upgraded visuals. You are back on the planet Novo playing as an older and much more agile Lana who is still traveling with her cat-like buddy Mui. The story kicks off when a new mystery starts bubbling up from the planet's depths, and a strange threat begins to tear the local tribes apart. Honestly, the hand-painted environments look even better this time around, and every screen feels like a piece of high-end concept art. What's interesting is how the puzzles are built directly into the nature of the world, so you never feel like you are just hitting switches for no reason. You have to use Mui to reach high ledges or distract mechanical guards while you sneak through the tall grass. The movement is way more fluid now because Lana can wall jump and use her momentum to clear massive gaps that would have been impossible before. Plus, the bond between the two characters is still the heart of the experience, and it makes every narrow escape feel super intense. The truth is that the orchestral soundtrack does a lot of the heavy lifting for the storytelling since there is no actual dialogue. You will spend a lot of time exploring frozen mountains and deep underwater ruins while trying to figure out where your partner actually came from. Even so, the difficulty stays pretty fair because the game focuses more on your observation skills than on punishing your reflexes, meaning you can really take your time to soak in the atmosphere between the high-stakes chase sequences. It is a standalone story, so you do not even need to have played the original to understand why you are running for your life. Anyway, this is a must-play for anyone who wants a cinematic experience that feels like a playable animated movie. Shinobi Art of Vengeance.
You just sealed your fate!
This is a massive treat for retro fans because one of the most legendary ninja franchises is finally back with a modern coat of paint. This title is a direct follow-up to the classic Genesis games, and it features a hand-drawn art style that looks exactly like a high-budget anime. You step into the shoes of Joe Musashi as he hunts down a paramilitary group after they burn his village to the ground. The thing is that the combat is incredibly fast, and you have to master your sword slashes and kunai throws to survive the literal hordes of enemies. You can also use magical powers called Ninpo to clear the entire screen when things get too crowded during a big encounter. Also though, the level design has shifted toward a Metroidvania style, where you explore branching paths to find hidden upgrades and health boosts. What's wild is how the developers managed to keep the tight controls of the arcade original, while adding modern features like air dashing and dodge rolling. You will face off against massive bosses that range from high-tech mechs to supernatural beings straight out of Japanese folklore. And believe it or not, there are secret rifts that lead to platforming challenges where you can earn shards for a legendary dark katana. The game expects you to be tactical with your resources because your strongest magic has very limited uses during a run. In other words, you cannot just spam your best moves and expect to reach the end of the stage in one piece. The animations are buttery smooth, and it really shows off the talent of the team that worked on the recent Streets of Rage revival. On top of that, the soundtrack is a banger that blends classic themes with modern electronic beats to keep your energy up. Basically, this is the ultimate ninja power trip that rewards you for being aggressive and precise at the same time. You should definitely check out the arcade mode once you finish the main story to see how fast you can really clear these levels. Yooka-Replaylee. Imagine taking a colorful N64 collectathon and giving it a total overhaul so it actually plays like a modern masterpiece. This game is a complete reimagining of the duo's first outing, and it fixes pretty much every issue fans had with the original version. You control a chameleon named Yooka and a bat named Laylee as they try to stop a greedy corporate bee from stealing all the world's books. The biggest change is that the levels are fully open from the start, so you do not have to wait to unlock the cool parts of the map. And yeah, the camera system is actually good now, which makes navigating the massive 3D environments way less of a headache. You spend your time hunting for golden pages by completing races, and solving environmental puzzles for the local NPCs. Also, you can collect a new currency to buy tonics that change how the game looks or how the physics work in real time. The platforming feels much tighter, because the moveset has been polished to make jumping and gliding feel more responsive than ever. For instance, the reptile roll is a great way to gain speed and knock enemies out of your path while you explore the jungle. The truth is that the world is packed with so many secrets that you will probably spend hours just trying to find every single feather and coin. Here is the kicker, because the entire soundtrack was re-recorded by a full orchestra to give the music a much more epic feel. Still, the humor is just as goofy as it always was, and you will run into plenty of weird characters who need your help. You are basically going on a massive treasure hunt that feels like a love letter to the golden age of 3D platformers. This is the definitive way to experience this adventure, and it proves that the mascot platformer genre is still alive and kicking. Mio, Memories in Orbit.
It grew boundless from eye to heart.
What would you do if you woke up alone on a space station with nothing but fragmented memories pointing you toward what happened? That's the situation Mio is dropped into, and the game uses that mystery as the engine that keeps pulling you forward through every section. It's a puzzle platformer set in a beautifully weird sci-fi environment, and the level design is built around exploring and figuring out how all the pieces connect rather than just moving from A to B. Mio has this quiet, melancholy vibe that plays really well against the loneliness of drifting through an empty orbital station, and the atmosphere does a lot of the emotional heavy lifting. The gameplay mechanics are tied into the memory theme too, so recovering fragments actually unlocks new abilities and changes how you interact with the environment around you. Honestly though, the pacing is where the game really earns it, because it gives you room to breathe and figure things out without constantly holding your hand. It's the kind of game you play with headphones on while the rest of the world stays on mute. Little Nightmares 3. This next entry proves that teamwork makes the dream work, or in this case, it might just keep you alive. You play as two new characters named Lo and Alone who are trying to find a way out of a creepy place. One of you carries a bow, while the other uses a massive wrench to solve puzzles and fend off threats. The thing is that you can play this with a friend online, or have an AI partner help you out. You are trapped in a giant desert city called the Necropolis, where everything is built to be way too big. What is wild is the way the scale of the environment makes you feel completely helpless against the shadows. Honestly though, the puzzle design is much more complex this time because both players have to coordinate their actions. You might have to distract a giant baby while your partner sneaks behind it to pull a silver lever. And believe it or not, the game manages to be scary without using a single jump scare. So then you will find yourself holding your breath as you crouch through a room full of broken dolls. The atmosphere is thick with dread, and the sound design will have you jumping at every little creak. On top of that, the new tools give you more ways to interact with the world than before. You are basically trying to escape the spiral while avoiding a bunch of twisted monsters that want to catch you. Still, the core of the game is still about clever platforming and staying out of sight at all costs. Long story short, this is a perfect evolution of the series that shows two heads are better than one. You will definitely want to leave the lights on for this session. Big hops. There is something extremely satisfying about a physics system that actually lets you feel the weight of your character. You are a little green frog who just wants to bounce his way across a series of islands to reach a city. The gameplay is all about momentum and using your powerful legs to launch yourself into the air. It feels like a mix of a classic 3D platformer and a momentum-based racing game. And honestly, you will spend hours just trying to master the perfect arc for your big jumps. The truth is that the world is incredibly colorful and looks like a cartoon come to life. You have to collect flies and other shiny items to unlock new areas of the floating map. Meanwhile, you will encounter weird NPCs who challenge you to races or ask you to fetch high items. The thing is that the controls are super simple, but the skill ceiling is actually pretty high. You are basically just a small creature in a big world trying to see what is over the next hill. In other words, it is a low-stress experience that focuses on the pure joy of movement. You should definitely try to beat the developers' gold times on each level for a real challenge. Anyway, this is a great palate cleanser if you have been playing too many dark and gritty games. Super Meat Boy 3D. Maybe you think you are good at video games, but this title is here to prove you wrong immediately. The developers finally took the red cube into the third dimension, and honestly, it is just as punishing as the original. You are still trying to save Bandage Girl from the jerk Dr. Fetus while navigating through a literal nightmare of buzzsaws. You will die hundreds of times in every single zone, and that's why the instant respawn is so important. What's wild is how the levels show all your failed attempts at once after you finally reach the goal. You can wall run and dash in midair now to clear the massive gaps in the industrial ruins. The thing is that the controls are so tight that you can never blame the game for your mistakes. Also though, you have to find hidden bandages in every stage to unlock secret characters and dark world levels. Imagine trying to jump between moving saw blades while a laser is chasing you from behind. So yeah, you will probably be screaming at your monitor, but in a way that makes you want to try one more time. The truth is that the 3D depth makes the platforming feel fresh even if the core loop is the same. On top of that, the soundtrack is a banger that keeps your heart rate high while you suffer. Plus, the bosses are massive and require you to memorize their patterns perfectly to survive. It is a test of pure skill and patience that rewards you with the best feeling in gaming when you win. Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. So picture a world where pixel art meets one of the most brutal combat you have ever seen on a handheld. This side-scrolling adventure puts you in the shoes of a young ninja named Kenji who has to defend his village from demons. Ryu Hayabusa is away on a mission in America, so it is up to you to step up and handle the invasion. The combat is very fast, and you can switch between Kenji and a deadly assassin named Kumori at any time. Meaning you can use Kenji for up-close sword fighting, and then swap to Kumori to snipe enemies with kunai from a distance. The thing is that their souls are literally fused together, which gives you access to some insane power-ups. You can summon giant spider weapons and use ninja magic to wipe out entire screens of monsters. Also though, the platforming is very technical because you have to use a move to bounce off projectiles. What's wild is how the game rewards you for being aggressive by giving you a hypercharged state that one-shots most mobs. Look, you will be exploring branching paths that lead to secret dimensions full of even tougher challenges. The truth is that the boss fights are some of the most creative encounters in the entire series. On top of that, the animations are incredibly smooth and make every slash feel like it has real weight. And believe it or not, the story is actually pretty engaging as you try to stop the Demon Lord from crossing over. You will need to master the parry timing if you want to get a high rank on the harder difficulty levels. In other words, this is a love letter to the classic NES titles, but with the depth of a modern fighter. Donkey Kong Bananza. It has been way too long since we got a proper 3D adventure with our favorite tie-wearing gorilla. This time around, the team behind Mario Odyssey has taken the reins to create a massive sandbox world for DK to explore. You are heading deep underground to find these rare gems while trying to stop a greedy company from mining the planet's core. The coolest part is that the environments are almost completely destructible, so you can punch through walls to find secrets. You are not alone though, because a teenage version of Pauline is riding along to help you navigate the ruins. The gameplay revolves around finding animal transformations like a massive elephant or a fast-moving zebra. Say you need to reach a high ledge, you can just turn into an ostrich and glide across the entire room. What's wild is how much freedom you have to approach each objective in these giant open zones. Also though, you can collect gold to buy different outfits for DK like a hard hat or a tropical shirt. Plus, you will run into old friends like Wrinkly Kong who give you tips on how to master your new moves. Here's the kicker, because the boss fights are huge and involve using the terrain to your advantage. You might have to collapse a ceiling on a giant robot, or use your roll attack to knock over massive stone pillars. Honestly, the music is exactly what you would expect from a top-tier Nintendo title, and it keeps the vibes high, so then you should be ready to spend a lot of time just messing around in the sandbox and uncovering every hidden banana. Darwin's Paradox. Konami just dropped a game that basically turns a trip to the ocean into a full-on stealth mission. You control a very confused but very clever octopus named Darwin, who gets snatched from his reef by a shady company. The whole goal is to break out of a massive industrial lab while accidentally uncovering a world-ending conspiracy. And, moving around is the best part because you can stick to any surface with your suction cups. This means you are constantly climbing on ceilings and wrapping your tentacles around pipes to avoid security bots. There's also this camouflage mechanic that lets you blend into the background like a literal ghost. You will spend a lot of time hiding in plain sight or squeezing through tiny vents to bypass locked doors. Also though, you can spit ink to blind cameras or create a smoke screen when things get too sweaty. The physics feel a bit floppy in a funny way, which adds to the slapstick vibe of the whole adventure. So yeah, you have to manage your momentum while swinging through complex machinery and rotating cogs. Now, the animations make Darwin feel super expressive even though he never says a single word. The game gives off major Little Nightmares energy, but swaps the horror for a bright cartoon aesthetic. On top of that, the level design keeps you guessing with puzzles that require 360-degree thinking. Here's the kicker, because you even get to drive some of the human vehicles using your 8 arms. Meaning you are not just a helpless animal, but a tactical genius in a squishy body. The difficulty spikes during the boss chases can be a real pain if your timing is off by a millisecond. But seriously, seeing an octopus wear a human disguise to sneak past guards is worth the price alone. Keep your eyes peeled for those cardboard box references that pay homage to some classic stealth legends. Bionic Bay. Imagine a puzzle platformer where your main mechanic is swapping your body with nearby machines to work through a dark, industrial world full of traps that will absolutely punish you for being sloppy. That's Bionic Bay, and the whole thing is built around momentum and timing in a way that makes every clean run feel genuinely earned. The art direction is striking too, pulling this high-contrast black and orange look that makes every frame feel intentional and sharp. And believe it or not, the level design keeps layering new rules on top of each other, so just when you've settled into a comfortable rhythm, the game throws a wrench into it. The difficulty here is real, meaning you will grind a section multiple times, but it never tips over into the kind of unfair that makes you want to close the app entirely. Also though, the body swapping mechanic has way more depth than it sounds on paper because the puzzles start using it in combinations you genuinely won't see coming. If you like your platformers to feel like a puzzle game wearing a speedrunner's outfit, Bionic Bay is exactly that. Hollow Knight Silksong. After years of waiting, we finally get to see how much faster the movement feels in this long-awaited sequel. You play as Hornet, who is way more agile than the original protagonist, and that completely changes the level design. The platforming is built around her verticality and her ability to grab onto ledges to pull herself up. For instance, you have a move that launches you high into the air to reach hidden platforms. And honestly, the addition of a grappling hook called the Claw Line makes navigating the world of Farloom feel incredibly fluid. You will spend a lot of time ziplining across massive gaps and dodging through thorny hazards. What's wild is how the combat and the platforming blend together because you can use your needle to bounce off enemies. The truth is that the game feels much faster since you are constantly dashing and gliding with the Drifter's Cloak. Plus, the environments are much more vertical than the ruins of Hallownest, which rewards players who love to explore. And also, the controls are some of the tightest in the business and make every difficult jump feel fair. This precision is vital for the late game areas, which means you can really push the limits of your reflexes as you hunt down new tools and charms. Every new biome introduces a different way to move, like wind currents that carry you across bottomless pits. So then you should be prepared for some of the most intense and rewarding platforming challenges ever made. All that to say, the wait was worth it just to see Hornet fly through these haunted halls with such grace.